And it's just kind of that ability to like elevate beyond like even like his usual level to me. That's amazing just because baseball's not that type of sport, right? You always kind of hear about guys, gripping the bat a little too tight.
Yeah.
Right? That always usually backfires on you. And he's somehow found this like certain headspace where he can kind of will himself to do it without willing himself out of the result that he wants.
Do you think the Blue Jays are the better, maybe the tougher challenge for the Dodgers than the Mariners would have been?
God, I don't know. I think either. I honestly, I really do think this, and I don't know. Anyone who's read me over the years knows I'm not like a huge Dodger honk by any means. I think like this is going to be like a sweep. It would have been a sweep either way. I just don't think either team had the pitching to compete with the Dodgers. The bullpen, the Blue Jays bullpen is terrible. So is the Dodgers, right? But the difference is the Dodgers have starters that could go, maybe 7-8 innings, right? And you just have to get to Sasaki, right? You got the closer there. So, every game could have anywhere from 1 to 3 innings that are kind of scary there in the middle. Whereas like, whether it's the Blue Jays or the Mariners, they're going to have like half the game to cover like that, right? It's just kind of landmine after landmine. I just don't see how either team would have had a shot against the Dodgers. I mean, I'm looking at this, Blue Jays team, and I just don't see it.
It's Guerrero. Guerrero can hit anybody.
Right.
That's the one guy. And I obviously there, the Mariners had a couple guys, Raleigh, who could hit really good pitching, but Vlad's going to be every time he goes through, the Dodgers are going to have to think about it. What are we doing here? Which the Brewers did not have. Let's put it that way. But beyond that, it's one play. I got to agree. And I assume the Dodgers are pitching Snell in game 1, and I assume that the Blue Jays are pitching Savage in game 1. I might be wrong. It's the way I'm looking. I'm pretty decent at kind of looking at where things set up. Give me Gosman for game 2 against Yamamoto is how I would guess it. Blue Jays probably got to win game 1. I think Savage is their guy. If they can shut down the Dodgers, that means Ohtani and Betts and Freeman, all that, and somehow get a couple of runs, scratch a couple of runs against Snell. He's not lights out, maybe, and not make it into their bullpen. No, they're gonna have to hold something, but maybe Savage can go 7 innings. They got to win game 1, and then it's a series. If it's not game 1, Dylan Hernandez, Bill Plaschke, Bill Shaken, they're all right, and Jack Harris, it's over, and I'm probably gonna agree with that. And I don't like saying that any 7-game series, but it does feel like it. Or unless you're thinking it doesn't matter. I mean, let's not even discuss about them losing game 1. I think game 1 is up in the balance. Just with the emotion in that building in Toronto. Vlad could do something crazy. They got some other hitters there that are pretty good. Obviously not like Vlad. I think game 1 is the only way that the Blue Jays can get into the series. We have not talked since certain somebody went 6 1/3, struck out 10, 3 home runs. All of them were just freaking monsters. How does a Dodger universe change since Shohei Ohtani puts on probably the greatest single game performance in postseason baseball history? Maybe in baseball history. I don't know. I don't want to go that far because there's been some other. There's a pitcher hit 2 grand slams in 1 inning. A Giants pitcher, right? I think, or against the Giants, whatever it was. So whatever. But it was one of the all-time lift all boats. I shall carry everybody. I can do it. Performances we've ever seen. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, whatever. How does things change just in the clubhouse, the way they think about themselves, the way they think about everything, the future, the present, after Ohtani does an epic moment like that?
Yeah, I think it just like in the clubhouse, right? I mean, he was already like the guy, right? Where, you hear players kind of talk about like, oh yeah, I was expecting him to hit a home run there. There's kind of this, belief in like one guy that you just kind of just don't have in the sport. And my guess that just kind of increased, but this was really about, I think, again, the whole two-way thing being brought into question again.
Yeah.
There was a
by others.
There was a lot of negativity, and I think like, let's be honest, right? The way this works, where a lot of the, press, he doesn't talk much. He only talks after his starts. He doesn't say anything. Like he's almost like deliberately, evasive kind of with everything. Doesn't really say anything. I don't think he's right. He's not like and in that way, he's not the greatest guy to cover, right? We do not know this guy. And even the Japanese reporters, frankly, who have been around for a very long time covering this guy, do not know him at all. So I do think that like when he kind of started slumping, it was kind of like the knives came out, right? And the last kind of press conference that there was, in like when the series moved back to LA after it was in Milwaukee, all the questions were kind of about, right. Jack Harris started it off by, hey, you don't hit. Your numbers say you don't hit on the days you pitch, the days after you pitch, and then there were multiple questions kind of related to that. And this has been kind of Ohtani's career, right? When he turned professional in Japan and they announced his plan that he was going to play both ways, the Japanese baseball establishment, like Hall of Famers and stuff, came out saying, this is disrespectful, that you think that you can do this in professional baseball, right? When he came to the United States, people were saying, accomplished, but Yu Darvish was like, oh, there's no way he can do that in the United States, in the major leagues, right? Ichiro was the one, I think I mentioned this before, he was the one guy who said he could do it, but that he should alternate seasons. But again, there was a lot of doubt of whether he could do it, right? When he blew out the first time with his elbow with the Angels, I think that there were, kind of, right, even people around him that were kind of like, yeah, maybe he's a really good hitter. Maybe he should just hit at this point, right? And so this was kind of the latest like episode of that, I think. And I think he kind of felt that. Now he obviously in the post-game interview, he denied this, but to me, when I went out and when I saw that game, that to me was a big like you to everybody, right? And that's what makes him so kind of, he doesn't say anything, right? Afterwards, he doesn't say anything, but you kind of know that's like the one thing he kind of insists on, and look, like the reality is that the team is paying him $2 million a year right now. 68 of it is deferred. They've been able to go out and spend more because of this. This is a very, very team-friendly contract, and he's brought in probably hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising revenue at this point, right? So the team is kind of beholden to him. If he says he wants to do this, he wants to do this. But even around the team, you kind of started hearing a little bit of like, well, we should probably pitch him the day before an off day so that, kind of that stuff doesn't, interfere with his hitting. The pitching doesn't interfere with his hitting, right? And so like he's smart enough to know all this, and I think that this was kind of the okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a moment here that you no one that saw it is ever going to forget it, And I think he understands too, right? That the American baseball, we value the postseason, right? It's kind of you can do all this in the regular season. Doing it in the postseason is like a whole different thing. And sure, he did it in the regular season, but you could probably, like most, right? I mean, no one hit, let's be honest, like nobody hits like the really good pitchers. And so I'm sure if we went back and looked at his 50, whatever home runs, it'd be like, okay, well, bad pitcher, bad pitcher, bad pitcher, bad pitcher, whatever, bad pitch, but this was kind of, okay, yeah, he wasn't facing, those guys that the Phillies had, right? He wasn't facing Christopher Sanchez,
yeah.
But, still a playoff team with the playoffs, pitching out there, and he hit 3 home runs. And I think that kind of the immediate thing is this is going to temporarily at least kind of subside that talk about kind of the two-way thing. Oh, there's another big one, by the way, right? Was the year, when the Angels told him, you are going to play full-time now, right? So they went to him and, before, the first couple seasons with the few seasons with the Angels, it was he didn't pitch, or he didn't hit. Sorry, the days before he pitched, he didn't hit the day he pitched, and he didn't hit the day after he pitched. And they basically went to him that year, and they're like, "You're going to hit every day now." And his reaction actually at the time, and I don't think that this is incorrect, by the way, even though the Angels deny it, now they're like, "Oh yeah, we knew he could do this," but he felt that they were trying to force him to make a decision, right? Either to pick one or the other. And he responded by winning the MVP award for the first time and, having arguably, again, what was the greatest all-around season in baseball up to that point, So every time that this guy, you kind of back him into a corner like this, he does seem to respond like this. But this was even more spectacular than I thought. I thought, right, that just that first inning where he struck out the side and came back and hit the home run, I thought like, okay, that's cool. Then he kind of hits like 2 more. You're just like, man. But this is kind of interesting, because I think, and I want to ask you this, Tim, because like in Japan, I think, right, it's, the value is in the journey, the result is just kind of the result almost, and the I think if you ask anybody in Japan, right, even if it were to cost the team wins, even if it were to cost the team championships, they want to see him play both ways because I think it's viewed there, right? You want people to dream and kind of see beyond, right? You want to
it's expanding
the boundaries of
yeah,
possibility.
it's expanding what we think is possible. Yes,
right now,
and that is so. That's why we're going to talk about him forever. The fact that he did it in the LCS obviously it magnifies that, but it's because it's the two-way. It's he can beat you every single way you can get beaten on a baseball field. I want to ask you, like, how close do you think he actually came to at least considering the Toronto Blue Jays in free agency? We know there was that report, however true it was, he was getting on a plane, right? All that stuff. And maybe that was exaggerated. Maybe it was inflated, but did you ever think it was possible that he was signing with the Blue Jays?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like, here's the thing, right? Again,
and why would the Blue Jays have been an option for him?
Yeah, I mean, again, and I'm only guessing, right? I do not know this guy at all. Even after all these years, I speak his language. I do not know him at all, right? I mean, I guess, part of the appeal could be that it's, I guess a nicer city, right? It's obviously very, it's an international city. It also maybe doesn't have like quite the tradition, especially the recent tradition that the Dodgers had, right? Like you go there, you win, it's going to be because of you. And, so, and I think that's why he chose the Angels, right, the first time around, right, was because it's like, okay, like this, it's kind of the second team. And if the Angels become something, I'm going to be the one. It's going to enhance like my legacy, right? And I think, that quite didn't go according to plan because, again, in Japan, with Nippon Ham, when he joined that team, they had just lost Yu Darvish a year earlier, right? And they were basically in a complete rebuild. Now, in Japan, you kind of don't trade as much, right? Free agency is a factor, but even then, it's not quite the factor it is here. Players don't even have agents over there, right? So, it's kind of easier to kind of get a young core and kind of build around it. And kind of sure enough, what happened was when, by the time Ohtani was ready to be like a full-fledged two-way player, well, the players around him had also kind of matured, and so that was kind of viewed as like, right. And when they eventually won a Japan series, that became like, that was Ohtani's championship. That was his team. Right. And so, now he's been so spectacular, obviously, since he's come here, that these Dodgers, even with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Clayton Kershaw, whatever, this is kind of the Ohtani era, right? He's going to be the one guy that you think of first when you think of this team. But, I kind of thought like, well, maybe there is a chance because he had done it again before with the Angels that maybe he wouldn't make the obvious choice and go somewhere like that. But, in retrospect, I do think he understood that he had to win. I think the years in Anaheim, where it was like him and Mike Trout, and it's not like they didn't kind of try, right? They just, they misallocated their money. They signed Rendon, who turned into this like huge albatross. And I think he kind of understood how, like in retrospect, now that you look at it, and now that you know that he chose the Dodgers, I think he understood how hard it was to win, and here you have this team that can win all the time. Okay. And now I can even help facilitate this process by taking less money and giving them more money to do whatever they do. Because I do think that he understood that like winning a championship was going to be like a huge part of his legacy. And again, it's just, to me, because in one way, right, like he took care of the World Series last year, and kind of going back to the last game here, it's kind of, that said, I think he kind of understood too, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I hit in the regular season, right? I've won a championship. It's just crazy how he just kind of produces it on will, right? Where, kind of those like, oh, it would be incredible if he hit now moments, the way he can elevate himself, like obviously, like, look, we saw Barry Bonds, and there's no compare. Like to me, Barry Bonds is by far the greatest hitter I've ever seen in my life. But that said, like whenever like Barry hit a big home run, it was just because he's just that good, right? Like it could have, it doesn't matter what day of the week. It's like Barry Bonds is going to hit if you throw him a strike. Whereas like this guy's he looks normal, he looks human sometimes. Right? Again, that Phillies series, he couldn't hit at all, and it's just kind of that ability to like elevate beyond like even like his usual level to me. That's amazing, just because baseball is not that type of sport, right? You always kind of hear about guys, gripping the bat a little too tight. Right? That always usually backfires on you. And he's somehow found this like certain headspace where he can kind of will himself to do it without willing himself out of the result that he wants.